Let's discuss the First State games and the Boise State game, for that matter, with Trevor Matich of ESPN, college football analyst, on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline. It is a Matich Monday. Trevor, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Great to be here, guys.
Okay, it's been a couple days since Boise State, but we haven't talked to you since then. So there was a lot going on in that game. No Jamal Williams, 4th and 19, 5 takeaways, and so on. What was your reaction and some of your takeaways from the Boise State game?
Well, reaction was, boy, BYU is really, really good everywhere except for one spot. And they aren't able to compensate for that. That's the way they pass the ball. They aren't able to compensate for that with what they're doing so well in other places. But as you watch them play, they still aren't showing any signs of pointing any fingers. You see a team that's playing hard. You see a team that plays for each other. You see a team that is fully behind the coaching staff. And even though this game ended up in another frustrating close loss, there are a lot of positive things to take out of this.
Trevor, our Twitter question today that we're asking BYU Sports Nation is, sum up your thoughts on this BYU football season through 8 games in one sentence. Now, we'll probably give you more than one sentence to answer this if you'd like. But when you look at BYU through 8 games, what are your thoughts on this season to this point?
Well, let's see. One sentence. It would be let's see, the most exciting and painful first 8 games of a season in combination that I can remember BYU playing. I mean, because they're so fun to watch. It's crazy how fun they are to watch. And actually, that's a really positive thing, because when it comes to the TV folks, they don't really, I'm not saying they don't care who wins, but what they really care about is that it be really exciting and very relevant. And this game was exciting and relevant on a national basis because of where Boise State stands from a standpoint of their possibility of making the New Year's Six Bowls if they could beat BYU. All that stuff was going on from the very beginning until the final gun, and so this is an exciting season, but it just as exciting as it is, it also hurts like crazy. And
there have been so many close games. 6 of the 8 decided by 3 or less. 7 of the 8 decided by 7 or less. So let me ask you this: is it better or worse when you look at the first 8 games that so many have been close and that there have been 4 losses by a combined 8 points? Would you rather have some blowouts and be like, well, that wasn't even a game, or a couple where you go, a few plays away from being much better?
No, it's easier emotionally if you get blown out in the moment just because, hey, it's the other guy's day. These kind of games where you have the possibility of winning and then you just get your heart ripped out of your chest. It's just grueling and excruciating. That's one of the reasons I think that there's a lot to be excited about, because it hasn't crushed BYU emotionally. They still are coming back and still are fighting. But the fact that the games are so close, in a way, validates what the coaches are doing, what they're asking them to do. And again, there are things that need to be tightened up, as will always be in the first year of an offensive and defensive system. But the players can look at the tape, and they can see that for all the mistakes, for all the heartache, they literally are just a few plays away from being 6-2 or even 7-1. Now, those plays happened, and BYU did not finish in those losses, those close losses. Even so, there's a whole lot of difference when you've got a new coaching staff in, when you're not competitive, in which case you're wondering if the coach's style will work, or if you are competitive and you could see on tape, just that one thing, I just needed to do that one thing, and we would have won that game. And that validates what the coaches are doing.
One thing, Trevor, that this BYU defense has been fantastic with all season is forcing turnovers. And 2 losses in particular, they've been very good. That was at Utah and at Boise State. In those games, they had 6 takeaways, and in the other, they had 5. They've lost both of those games. How does that happen?
It happens, Jason, because they're not able to finish on offense. Getting the turnover is one thing. Now you've got to punch it in. And BYU's not able to do that against better defenses. Against lesser defenses, the injuries on the offensive line, missing, for example, Jamal Williams in this game against Boise State, against lesser defenses, that doesn't matter as much. But against better defenses, you have to have plan A, which for BYU is run the ball, and plan B and plan C. You've got to be able to spread the field and be balanced, especially with this style of offense. And BYU still isn't able to pass the ball with any regularity or predictability. They'll make some good throws and some big individual passing plays, but those are one-offs. They're not the kind of precision that you saw Boise State open up with. I mean, you saw with Brett Rippon, Boise State's quarterback, just a surgical precision where he knew where to go with the ball. He threw it before the receiver made his break. It was a dime most of the time. It was accurate, and it was just every time he released that ball, before you ever saw it caught, you expected that it would be caught. And when BYU throws the ball, it goes down the field, and you kind of hope that maybe something good might happen. And that's where they stand right now. Now, there are reasons for that. And in some ways it's understandable because of the nature of the first year of this kind of offense, which is so different from what it's been in recent years. Either way, that's the reason that they're not able to capitalize on all these turnovers. They're not able offensively to be balanced enough against the better defenses to take those turnovers, punch them into the end zone, and have those turnovers translate not just into momentum on their side, but to daggers on the scoreboard.
You've talked about how getting 7-8 wins would be really good for this BYU football team. Now they have 4 games left in November after this bye week. ESPN's Football Power Index gives BYU the second highest chance of any team in the country of winning out. What do you think the chances are BYU wins all 4 in November?
Well, the fact that they're getting a bye week next week, I think, is huge. And they've got a very, very good chance. I mean, the 4 teams they face have a combined losing record. None of them has a winning record. And so they're losable games, especially at Cincinnati is tough. And then the rivalry game with Utah State, that's always a completely unpredictable, tear your hair out potential nightmare. That's the nature of the game. It's part of the fun of the game. But the way BYU has handled the first 8 games, without a break, it's just an unrelenting grind. And in those games, you've got to realize that 6 of the 8 were against Power 5 teams, and one of the other 2 against Boise State was against a team that's ranked 14th in the nation. And the other one, Toledo, has one of the best offenses in the country. So this is one of the toughest schedules, one of the tougher schedules in the country. So after this bye, BYU can finally take a rest. And if they take the same mentality that they used in those first 8 games in their preparation, which is to say, be urgently focused on every day in practice, on every meeting that they have, and treat the last 4 like they treated the first 8, there's no reason why they couldn't win out. And if they do, to finish the regular season 8-4, given the way this season has been, I think would be overall, with all the frustrations, one of the better coaching jobs and one of the better performances by a team on the field that we've had in recent years, given the schedule.
Through the 8 games with BYU being 4-4, how has your opinion about this BYU team changed, or has it?
You know, it's solidified the things I think that are most important. We talk about the passing game, and we see that. We're frustrated by it. But what's more important is the culture. Coaches that build successful programs don't do it through fancy schemes and X's and O's. Remember Charlie Weiss at Notre Dame. He came in from winning Super Bowl championships as the offensive coordinator with the New England Patriots and Tom Brady. Famously came into college football and said that they will have a decided schematic advantage. Well, maybe they did, but he wasn't able to build the culture of winning in college football. And that culture starts with expectation and accountability. And BYU knows what's expected of them. And they are accountable to each other in the locker room, not just accountable to the coaches who are in charge of punishing people that don't live up to what they need to do. And the fact that that culture has already been established is so much bigger than whether they win or lose a game by a field goal or whatever. I mean, I think the biggest loss that they've had this year is by 3 points, right? And so
pretty crazy.
It's crazy. And so we get caught up in the X's and O's and the what-ifs and the plays that turn the game in losses like that. But overall, the culture of this team is evident. And it's the culture that not only will lead this team to greater heights down the road, it's the culture that will draw recruits. The best recruiters in any program aren't the coaches. It's the players in the locker room, because the players will tell recruits the truth. They'll tell them the truth. And recruits can tell if players are lying to them. Coaches tend to be better politicians than players. And so these players have bought in, and that will also be great for the future, because recruits will come and see how much these current players believe in what they're doing. And that is so much bigger than what happens in a 3-point win or a 3-point loss on a given Saturday.
To follow up on that, and I'm curious to get your take on this, and realizing that it doesn't have anything to do with X's and O's or anything like that, but there have been some very popular like locker room celebrations where you see the team really enjoying being around each other and the coaches dancing. How much do you think that can affect a recruit in terms of that family atmosphere and that environment that they're looking for?
Oh, they love it because it's an emotional moment. You have those locker room celebrations in a big win, and the big win creates big emotion. That's one of the reasons that teams tend to bring in recruits for the biggest games, because if you win those games, the recruits can feel the emotion of the players and the crowd. And that's important because there are academic criteria that a recruit will go through, and academics is one of those criteria. But I mean, they'll look at different things they'll check off. Do I like this? Do I like that? Et cetera, about a school. But ultimately, recruiting is the same as sales. And every salesperson listening to us right now will tell you that sales is more about emotion than anything else. We think about the things that we need in order to decide whether to buy a product or service. Those things are like the X's and O's in a football game. But the final decision is the emotion. The emotion. How will it make me feel when I buy this? How will it make me feel when I use this, when I own this? And that emotion is much more powerful than the cerebral connection with whatever checklist you have. And so that's one thing that's so important with this BYU team. They've had emotions on the high end and on the low end. But overall, I think recruits will come in here and they'll feel the underlying core emotion, which is not dependent upon whether or not you win a game. The core emotion in that locker room, I believe, is a very solid one that recruits will be able to feel. Remember that the greatest coaches are the ones with the best players, and so that's an important thing.
ESPN's Trevor Matich is on BYU Sports Nation. We're going deep today. Let's go national now. Ohio State goes down after the blocked field goal return at Penn State. So as of now, who do you think's going to make the college football playoff, Trevor?
Well, right now it's looking like Alabama is going to be unbeatable. Alabama does have issues on offense, by the way, and the issues on offense for Alabama in a lot of ways are similar to the issues for BYU. Alabama doesn't throw the ball down the field consistently well enough. Their defense is phenomenal, and they score a lot of touchdowns on defense, which, by the way, BYU's defense scored 2 touchdowns off turnovers in this game. BYU's offense against Boise State scored 1 touchdown. BYU's defense scored 2. Right? Well, that's what Alabama does, right? But Alabama is much farther ahead. They've got a mature offensive system, a mature recruiting pipeline with players recruited to this system now that have been there their entire careers in this same system, and all that helps. But they still aren't consistent enough in hitting the passing game and throwing the ball where the defense gives you, take what the defense gives you, and then complete the balls downfield that are there. They're not that great at that yet, but their defense is so good that they're able to get away with that. Alabama, I think, is number 1 there. Michigan, I'm not sure how good Michigan is because they really still haven't been tested on the field. Their best win is against Colorado, who turns out to be a pretty good team. Mm-hmm. But Michigan right now is looking to be like they could be that team. I worry about Ohio State because they have all the talent, but remember that they came into this league or into this season with the least experienced team that Urban Meyer has ever had. They lost 12 guys to the draft, the NFL draft last year, 10 of them in the first 3 rounds. And many of those were underclassmen. So a lot of guys had to play early. And they still haven't been able to put it together. And by the way, it's the same problem BYU has. Ohio State can't throw the ball with regularity and consistently, especially down the field. So defenses will come up and jam up the short passing game and the running game for Ohio State, and it bit him in this game against Penn State. They lost. And so it's not just a BYU thing. This is kind of going around the ranks of college football. But when you look at the other teams, I would suggest this, that Louisville sits at number 5 right now in the AP poll. And people say that they're one of the top 4 teams, and I believe that Louisville is one of the best 4 teams in the country right now. But I think you've got to maintain the integrity of the regular season. And to me, if it comes down to benefit of a doubt between Louisville if they don't win the ACC because Clemson wins out, and a one-loss or no-loss conference champion, you've got to take the conference champion and treat the Clemson win over Louisville as a de facto playoff game during the regular season. So right now, after Alabama, there's a whole bunch of question marks. Michigan just hasn't faced anybody, so I don't know. Clemson, their offensive line isn't all that great. Clemson's offense is really sluggish and struggling. Washington looks complete, but they haven't faced anybody. Louisville lost the playoff game to Clemson. Ohio State can't throw the ball down the field. Nebraska, I mean, who knows how good Nebraska is? I don't know how good they are yet. We're going to find out against Wisconsin. I guess that's a lot of information to kind of say that right now BYU is not the only team that has aspects of their game that they're frustrated with. Even Alabama, the most unbeatable team in the country right now, has aspects of their offense that they're frustrated with. But they're the only ones that I have full confidence in when you talk about the top, getting into the top 4 and succeeding there.
But that's why we love college football. What we think we know, we probably don't, and it could shake out differently. Trevor, we appreciate the time. Have a great week, man.
All right, thanks, guys.